The Sopranos went off the air almost 20 years ago, and there are still grown men driving to North Caldwell, New Jersey on a Tuesday afternoon to idle at the edge of a driveway and stare at a house like it's the Ark of the Covenant. Sounds ridiculous, but you need to understand what this show actually did. It took the least glamorous version of this state, the stretch of split levels, strip malls, and body shops between Newark and the good school districts, and turned it into the most recognizable suburban geography in American television. Belleville, North Arlington, a pork store in Kearney, places that had never once been considered worth looking at. Gandolfini's gone, HBO moved on, and the butcher shop is still selling sausage. Today we're going through the Sopranos locations across New Jersey you can still visit and what actually happened at each one. Before we get into it, subscribe to the channel so we can keep making the best New Jersey content on YouTube. Let's go. First up, Tony's house in North Caldwell. They scouted around 150 homes for the pilot before landing on this one, which tells you David Chase knew exactly what he wanted and had a hard time finding it. He was house hunting in Essex County, going through the same misery you go through, except he had a larger budget and a camera crew. The house was built in 1987 by Victor and Patricia Recchia, and they have lived there ever since. This is an actual couple who built a house, raised a family in it, and then woke up one morning to find out their driveway was the most recognizable driveway in America. Every day, for years, somebody's cousin from Bergen County slowing down at the bottom of the lawn to photograph their garage. You built that house to have a nice life in North Caldwell, and instead you got a landmark with brutal property taxes. It's about 5,600 square feet on an acre and a half, 4 bedrooms, pool out back, detached guest house. In 2019, the Recchias decided to sell it themselves at a starting price of $3.4 million. Starting price. That is not a phrase that generally exists in residential real estate. That's an auction word. The ask was roughly double what comparable Caldwell homes were going for because they weren't selling square footage. They were selling the fact that Tony Soprano walked down those steps in a bathrobe to get the paper. Now, here's the thing that might ruin it for people. Only the pilot used the real kitchen and interior. Everything after that was a set built on a soundstage in Queens. Every argument at that kitchen island, every plate of ziti, every one of those long silences at the counter, all of it happened in New York. The most famous Italian-American kitchen in Jersey history is a very convincing lie sitting in a warehouse across the river. Drive past, but don't pull in, don't knock, and don't get out of the car. People live there. It's a house. Next, Holsten's in Bloomfield. Holsten's has been open since 1939, which means it had a 68-year head start before Chase ever picked it. It was already a good ice cream parlor, made its own chocolate, had regulars and a lunch counter and a family behind it. Then in 2007, they filmed the last 4 minutes of the greatest drama in television history in there, cut to black. And every server in that building spent the next 2 decades explaining to strangers where they're allowed to sit. When Gandolfini died in 2013, the owner put a reserved sign on the booth and quietly took it out of circulation. Then, during a 2024 remodel, they auctioned off the actual booth on eBay, and it sold for $82,600. $82,000 for a vinyl bench that had 1,000 milkshakes spilled on it by 1,000 children who did not care about the Sopranos. The money went into new booths and new floors, which means a stranger on the internet paid to renovate an ice cream parlor in Bloomfield. The jukebox wasn't included in the sale, reason being it wasn't a real jukebox. It was a filming prop, the single most argued about jukebox in the history of American television, the one where the song choice supposedly tells you whether he lives or dies, and it didn't play music. It was furniture. So the shrine's still there, the onion rings are still there, the place is still packed, but the original booth is in somebody's basement. Next, Pizza Land in North Arlington. 2 seconds on screen, that's it. 2 seconds in the opening credits, a little box of a building flashing past the passenger window while Tony drives home, and that building is now an international tourist destination. Pizza Land's been there since 1965, and it's comically small, roughly the size of a two-car garage with an oven in it, and people fly in from other countries to stand in front of it. There's a Gandolfini tribute inside, and the whole place is a shrine to the show at this point. And honestly, what else were they going to do? It had a rough patch, too. The previous caretaker died, the place sat closed for about a year, and the current owner brought it back. A little pizzeria in North Arlington almost disappeared the way little pizzerias quietly disappear, and somebody decided that wasn't going to happen. Stand outside, look down the hill, and you can see the Manhattan skyline from there. Exactly the way it sits in the credits. The entire opening credits are one guy leaving the city and not looking back at it. And you can watch that whole idea play out from a pizza place parking lot in North Arlington for free. Next, Vesuvio, which is now Del Porto Ristorante in Elizabeth. Artie Bucco's place. The restaurant Tony has torched in the pilot on purpose as a favor because a hit was planned there, and Artie being open that night meant Artie's life was over one way or another. So Tony saved his friend's reputation by burning down his restaurant so he could collect insurance money and start fresh, and then sat there through the whole aftermath watching him grieve about it. Artie Bucco is the most tragic man on that show, and he never got shot once. He's a guy who wanted to cook, who was good at cooking, and who spent 6 seasons getting emotionally strip-mined by a friend he'd known since childhood, and he kept inviting him back. The building is still a restaurant, just under a different name and a different kitchen. It didn't get turned into a bank or a smoke shop. It stayed a restaurant, which in this state is close to a miracle. From season 2 on, the Vesuvio exterior you're picturing wasn't in New Jersey at all. It was a restaurant in Queens. Half the Vesuvio you remember is Elizabeth and half is Queens, which is the emotional experience of loving this show in one sentence. Now, Livia's house in Verona, modest white house built in the 1920s, quiet block in Verona. It looks essentially the same today as it did on camera, the only real difference being a chain-link fence production used to put up for shooting. 30 years later, same house. Livia's in a small pre-war house in Verona, a woman who survived a difficult century and never let anybody forget it. And her son's in a 5,600 square foot colonial with a pool and a guest house, and she treats every square foot of it as a personal insult, not because she wants it, but because he has it. That's what makes her the most frightening character in the series, a woman who never threw a punch, never carried a weapon, and got more people hurt than anybody in the crew, working entirely through size and phone calls. Same family, 2 New Jerseys, and if you grew up here, you've watched this exact standoff play out at a holiday table. There's the generation that came up in the small house and the generation that got out to the bigger town, and the small house has never once said the word proud out loud. Next, Green Grove Retirement Home, which is actually Green Hill in West Orange. Green Grove is where Livia gets parked and where a fair amount of business gets quietly conducted because a retirement community turns out to be an outstanding place to have a conversation nobody's going to record. In real life, it's Green Hill in West Orange, an actual operating senior living community with actual residents in it right now, which means the running joke of that whole storyline, Tony insisting it's a beautiful place with a great staff and Livia describing it like a Soviet labor camp, is a joke about a nice facility that got libeled on international television by a fictional elderly woman. Now, Centani's Meat Market in Elizabeth. Everybody knows Satriale's, the pork store, the meeting spot. In real life, this place was actually a set built in an empty building in Kearney that got demolished after the show and is now a municipal parking lot. But Satriale's was based on something else. Centani's is the butcher shop they used in the pilot, and the reason they stopped using it is funny. The actual business was too successful. It was such a busy working butcher shop that shutting it down to film regularly wasn't realistic, so production went and built their own version instead, modeled on this place. So the most famous fake pork store on the planet is a reproduction of a real butcher shop in Elizabeth. And that butcher shop is open right now, still cutting meat 6 days a week, closed Sunday like a serious operation. Its Google reviews are full of people who drove out to make the pilgrimage and then discovered the sandwiches are excellent, which is a better outcome than most pilgrimages. The famous one got knocked down for a parking lot. The real one never left and never stopped working. Next, Irvine Cozzarelli Memorial Home in Belleville. The building went up in 1887, which means it had well over a century of business behind it before HBO ever pointed a camera at it. It's where Livia gets laid to rest in season 3. In an episode they had to rebuild after Nancy Marchand died, using digital effects to put her on screen one last time. The technology was rough and everybody could tell, and it's still one of the eeriest things in the series. This place appears in 9 separate episodes, more screen time than several actual characters, and I've never once heard anybody name it on a list, which makes sense when you think about what the show is. A lot of people die on it, they all had to go somewhere, and where they went was Belleville. James Cozzarelli, who owned it and spent decades building out that interior by hand and who appeared on the show himself, died in 2021. The family tried to find another funeral director to take it over and couldn't. In 2022, the town started the process of declaring the block an area in need of redevelopment. The township's official position being that the layout is obsolete and it's too expensive to fix. The Historical Society's position being that the building is in immaculate condition and that's nonsense. In March 2024, the council adopted a plan for up to 74 apartments on the site. Last I could confirm, it's still standing. Closed, empty, but standing. That's a building from 1887 with an approved apartment plan sitting on top of it. So if you want to see the outside of the place where they buried half this cast, I wouldn't put it off until next spring. Next, the Bada Bing, aka Satin Dolls in Lodi. I'm keeping this one short because we already went deep on it in our video, 10 places the mob used to run in Jersey, and the real story there is significantly wilder than anything HBO wrote. Go watch that if you haven't seen it. Short version, Satin Dolls is a real go-go bar on Route 17 South in Lodi that HBO used as Tony's office. And the reason half of America can recognize a low white building on a Bergen County highway is that it spent 6 seasons as a workplace. It's still the most photographed strip club in the country, and probably the only one where the lot is full at 11 in the morning with people who have no intention of going inside. And finally, Big Pussy's Auto Body in Harrison, Cleveland Auto Body Repair, a family-owned shop that shows up in several episodes as Pussy Bonpensiero's front, a job description that requires no further comment from me. The name on the building has changed, but the building is still there and it's still an auto body shop. Same trade, same walls, new sign. Nobody preserved it. It just kept being what it was because Harrison still needs its cars fixed and history doesn't pay the lease. Right around the corner is the Spanish Pavilion, which the cast and crew were known to eat at during shooting and which is still open with around 1,500 reviews. So you get the location and then an actual meal instead of standing in a lot photographing a roll-up door and pretending that it was worth the drive. Drop a comment with the location you've actually been to and tell me which one I left off. And if you've got a Sopranos filming story, somebody in your family who got used as an extra, a place they shot on your block, put it below because half this state has one.